This morning, we are blessed to have a time-traveling, intuitive, spiritual counselor with us this morning, Louise Hauck. Louise is one of the Edge's voted top 25 speakers of the past, and she's back with us this morning. She has written Beyond Boundaries, Adventures of a Seer, Heart Links, and Fearless Future, and more books. Please give a very warm welcome to Louise Hauck.
Thank you. Thank you. I asked for a podium because last time I have a couple notes on my my iPhone, and on YouTube where the video was posted, I think 2010, there was some very nice comments, and one said, "Louise is great, but I wish she'd put down her iPhone." So I have it here. I have a little list of examples. Whenever I speak at a different venue, I like to vary the examples. So it's great to, now I'll find myself. It's great to be here. And I love talking about one of my most favorite subjects, consciousness. And I'll be covering consciousness, telepathy, and multidimensionality. And so my greatest joy in the work that I do as an intuitive is exploring consciousness. We are consciousness, in or out of the body. When we drop the body, we're pure consciousness, and we're simply non-physical consciousness. I no longer refer to the other side, because consciousness is non-local. It's everywhere. And the wealth of information available in this stream of consciousness, this eternal, timeless stream of consciousness, is absolutely fascinating. It's unlimited, infinite, and my apprentices and I have a wonderful time diving deep in the flow, the stream of consciousness, and exploring different ways to work with this vast source of information. So we are consciousness, momentarily inhabiting these golf cart bodies, tooling around in this dimension of duality, where we experience left, right, right, wrong, shoulds, shouldn'ts, and most of all, the dark and the light. We need that contrast to know the difference. The choices that work for us as opposed to the dumb choices that don't. When we wake up and become the non-evaluative observer, observing our thoughts, our feelings, our repeating patterns, then we start to gain insights. And those insights that work for us and sustain us over time become wisdom. And that's wisdom that goes with our soul into eternity. And so consciousness, this information, well, in this dimension of duality, again, we learn from the difference, the more illuminated choices as opposed to those that don't work for us. We learn to become our most authentic self. And when we're in that place of authenticity, in alignment, that's when the divine can work through us. And that's when we get the phone call, the parking place, bada bing, bada bang. My project manager is 20 years younger, and whenever she hears me say that, she says, "Oh, that's so 80s." And I say, but it just says it so well. When we start to know the difference from between illusion and disillusion, we start to get a feel for the difference in being in alignment and being out of sync. Nothing takes us out of sync faster than the ego self trying to grab that golf cart wheel. And I know it's my Edith ego when it's the voice in my head trying to rehearse the perfect conversation to just show so-and-so. And that's when I imagine myself giving Edith a hug and putting her in timeout. Then I'm back to my authentic self. I'm back in sync. Fear also takes us out of alignment, out of sync. Nothing gets you back into alignment faster, instantaneously, than opening your heart, going to the feeling of gratitude, appreciation, clients often say, I don't feel my husband around, he's passed over, I don't feel him around. And sometimes people think that the more lonely and despairing they're feeling, then a higher power will say, she's suffered enough, we'll send him in. But it's really the heart frequency that's lets them come through more clearly. It's the heart frequency that opens us up to fourth dimensional awareness. So in this third dimensional reality, we experience duality, time, space. We experience fear, worry, pain, drama, aging. And I love, yeah, joy too, yeah, it's there. And I love the attitude about aging here. I never say that I'm older. I say I'm experiencing olderness. And I'm currently kind of recalibrating. I look in the mirror and I say, have we met? Like, what's it going to be, this next chapter? What do I choose for it to be, this next chapter? And so we start to differentiate our more authentic self and our more illusionary self. And then we are much more privy to this fourth dimensional information. So third and fourth dimension, I believe, are starting to merge. Fourth dimension is simply non-physical. It's based in love and without the constraints of time and space. And it's from there that I get this infinite flow of information. And my challenge and my delight is how to funnel it down into this dense third dimensional reality where we use language. We have before and after. We have a linear way of perceiving and communicating. To let you know how it feels to experience the vastness of this timeless information, think about a moment when you've gotten an insight, an aha moment. And it's worth 1,000 words. That aha, suddenly it all makes sense. And then imagine if someone said, okay, write down what you just got. Yeah, it's so limiting, isn't it? To the vastness of your insight, and then to make it linear. And so one of the things I do with my apprentices is to create a customized template. Everyone thinks that everyone else is more psychic. And people put me on a pedestal. I was doing a talk in Portland last week and someone said, my powers. I said, it's not my powers. It's just, some are on dial-up, some are on fiber optic. In tuning into this infinite flow, this internet of information. And so once I get them, my apprentices leapfrogging over self-doubt, then we create a template. One apprentice who's an engineering consultant, he pretends that the information is coming down into a PowerPoint presentation. So the information that comes in the slides right in front of him is the present. Those to the left are the past. These are the future. One apprentice is exclusively clairaudient. She has to go home when she's at a workshop and they're asked to visualize. She just goes blank. But we discovered that she doesn't interrupt the flow of receiving highly intuitive information if I asked her to imagine or to pretend. Any word besides visualize. She said her sister is also clairaudient and used to watch TV with her ear to the TV, almost sing through her ear. So I'm fascinated with the unique way that people intuit themselves, and it's your own way. And so we create these templates, and then I put them through exercises that help them outrun the logical, censoring left brain. I have a wonderful example that came up just last week in Portland of someone moving from their left brain to their right brain. Well, first of all, my first example, an apprentice in Chicago, he's in the telecom industry, the IT industry, and he would have his weekly phone session at his office when everyone had gone home. And after a couple of weekly phone sessions, I had gotten him in the groove and helped him with an invocation. And the first thing I do with apprentices at the start of every phone session is to take a deep breath together. That gets us in sync. When I do phone consultations, sometimes when I ask the client to take a deep breath with me, I get a really loud yoga breath. And I hear, they're trying to be good boys and girls and give me a good yoga breath. And I say, that's really great, but it's a little distracting. Let's do it again. And so with this particular apprentice, it was his third session. Everyone had gone home. So he's been very much in his left brain, his logical, analytical brain, all during his workday. And so he was shifting gears, and I have, again, after a few sessions, I have apprentices scan my consciousness after we take that deep breath. I have to watch what I've seen on TV the night before. A few years ago, one apprentice picked up on a scene from Desperate Housewives that I'd watched the night before. So I heard him, we took the deep breath, and then I heard my apprentice say, okay, let me flip that switch. And then he started tuning in. I said, do you know what you just said? And he said, no, he was totally unaware that he was developing an internal mechanism to shift from left brain, logic, analytical thinking, to open heart, intuitive thinking. Except it's not thinking, intuiting. So last week in Portland, I love it when I can bring it back around after I digress, and that's my ginkgo biloba. So last week in Portland, I was doing a small group, and I come around to this fellow, and I can see his non-physical wife right beside him. And I said, so it's one big game of charades. I said, she's going like this. And he said, well, we used to argue. I said, no, I think there's more to it. And she's pointing to something about ring or rings. No, well, I put a ring in the canister with her ashes. No. So finally, as I'm moving on, he says, oh yeah. He said, before my wife passed over, she was in the hospital and had a ring on every finger. And she was really annoyed when the nurses made her take them all off. So he came for a private consultation, and it was a hoot. Well, the reason he came wasn't a hoot, but he'd lost everything. He'd lost his home and everything paying for the hospital bills for his wife when she passed over. So I did some counseling about getting him out of his homeless story. And I merged with this timeless consciousness, and I went to the past to find an empowering moment. Sometimes I can see where a client has known God. It looks like a flash. When a messenger from the angelic realm is popping in, it's like someone's lit a match. They used to show me, hey, I know you got that figurine of an angel. They think it's really cool. But now they show me actual moments of intervention when the angelic realm has intervened. I'll see a car spinning in an intersection, and the client said, oh yeah, it was really strange, and someone was barreling at me, and everything kind of stopped, and then it started again when I moved out of the intersection. And that was an angelic intervention. Elementals also come forth in a flash, and often they tell me to tell the client to tell their child to go to my website at the gallery to look at the picture of Tinkerbell. That's a picture of an elemental that came out on film for a friend who has eyes to see. She has a sense of wonder about life. It's true that you'll see it when you believe it, as opposed to you'll believe it when you see it. And she saw the elemental on a poppy across her living room. She said, you're so beautiful. Will you stay there a minute while I take your picture? She reaches for the point and shoot beneath the cabinet, takes the picture, it comes out on film. So check it out on my website. Go to Media, Gallery, and then there's Tinkerbell. And there's also 3 pictures of me holding up children, and their children I interpreted to their parents before they were born. These are souls who, when they go like this, that's code for, and I'm going to be a soul returning, remembering. And these are souls at 3, 4 years old who might say, when I was your mommy, I used to drive you down this street. So that's in the first row of the pictures on the gallery. So this fellow, I merged with his consciousness, and I went to I just set forth my intention. Where has he been empowered? And I saw him sitting in a semicircle and saying something, and 2 men looking right at him. He had hit the mark. He was empowering them in that moment. And he said, oh yeah. And people usually remember those moments. They're indelible. They're timeless. He said, I used to manage homes for developmentally disabled. And I said, you need to feed that feeling. So first he was in his head, oh yeah, I remember that. And I said, can you remember the feeling of working with those people? And he thought for a minute, and then I could tell, I usually hear a when they come out of their head and into their heart. So I said, you need to feed that feeling, you need to get out of this homeless story, face forward, and then I got a feeling of him in a recliner. I said, did you used to have a recliner? He said, oh yeah. And I said, it's going to be something like that when you fall into your next living situation. But you need to carry with you the demeanor, the empowerment you felt when you were doing that work in the past. So his wife pops in. Great transmitter. And she's saying step by step, it's like two against one, or two empowering one. And she said, step by step, move forward, move forward. And then I said, he works now at Habitat for Humanity. And when I finished translating for their transmissions, I usually telepathize, and telepathy is just an organic part of all of this kind of communication. And so he works at Habitat. So I usually ask, so give us a sneak preview of a cosmic wink you're going to be sending. It can be pennies from heaven. It can be a bird coming up to the window. One client said, I just know the deer that keeps coming in my backyard is my mother. I said, no, the deer isn't your mother, but your mother's likely running her energy through the deer to say hello. I call it piggybacking on their frequency, like DSL. So she was showing me that she was going to send her husband a cosmic wink, that some representation of an angel, like a figurine, was going to show up at Habitat for Humanity. Then she says, so tell him, don't put it on the dashboard. Now this information never makes sense to me. I never know why I'm saying what I'm saying. The puns, the metaphors. He said, no, that doesn't make any sense. She turns to me and she says, wait for it, wait for it. And then he says, oh yeah, when we were traveling in Peru years ago, we laughed about all the cab drivers who put statues on their dashboard. She was helping him expand into fourth-dimensional, multidimensional thinking. He says he feels her presence, but he doesn't know what she's saying. So as he was guided to continue on in a private consultation, it's like, all right, now we can get to it. And she was showing him how to trust what she's communicating to him. Wouldn't you hate to be non-physical and have your loved ones think you're dead? Many times clients are obsessed about the possessions in the aftermath of their passing, and the family's fighting over it, whatever. And they'll say, I don't need it. I don't need that stuff. It's not important to me. Anyway, it was just such a delightful example of third and fourth dimension blending, and how his loved one, this fellow's loved one, was trying to show him, like mentoring him, and how to open his heart and trust that intuitive kind of communication. So what's really fun for me, again, is finding vehicles, and you'll see why I say pun intended, in which to convey this multidimensional information. A certain modality becomes a method for me when it comes to me intuitively how I can use this information, and then it continues to be useful, and then it becomes a then it becomes like a template or a vehicle, a certain way to pass on to my apprentices. So one time I was reading a gal, phone reading, and it's like a yellow Mercedes a yellow car jumps into the session. Well, after the invocation, I have to say people's pets and plants and vehicles and manuscripts all jump in first thing, usually the pets, often saying, could you please tell her to stop rattling the plastic bags every time she opens the pantry? It drives me crazy. Or I can feel the dog leaning towards what it likes to look at through the window, or the red splash of red, and that's its favorite red toy mouse or whatever. Excuse me. So, a yellow car jumps into this gal's session, and it reminded me of the animated movie Cars. I think that was Paul Newman's last movie that he did a voiceover for. I said, okay, this car just jumped in, and it's got its hands on its fenders. And pardon the expression, but it's like it knows it's about to drop its load. I don't know, drop its transmission. Or no, I know. This is even more crass. It's wanting to take a dump. And then that's when I said, "Baby, drop its transmission." She said, "Oh, my husband and I were just talking about my old yellow Mercedes, and we were wondering whether to drive it till it's ready to go to the dump, or just to continue using it until it crumps, whatever." So then I imagined myself getting into the yellow Mercedes and driving on down the road, and I described everything that we passed by. Unknowingly, that information related specifically to information relative to them finding their next dwelling. They had just been told they had to move. I was going on down the road, merged with a client's consciousness, and I said, well, first, there's a tree that really wants to thank you for the hugs. If you go to my public Facebook page, and I'm on Facebook kicking and screaming all the way, but Louise Hauck -Illuminations, and you scroll down, and there's a while ago I posted a picture. I said a 90-year-old tree. It's a 900-year-old tree. And it popped in to thank my two clients who are in a cycling club, and wanted to thank them for the hugs. And my client sent me the picture that I posted of the whole cycling team in front of this 900-year-old tree, and then there's one of his wife hugging it. So I'm going down the road, merged with this client's consciousness, and the tree, hey, thanks for the hug, I'll give you a sign, I'll drop a leaf by your foot, that sort of thing. It's every day to me. And then I said, there's a fox running across the road. I don't know what it means. And then I get the impression of a letter coming through a door. Well, it turns out her husband is a writer for Fox movies, and they owed him some back pay. And the check came through the door in the mail a few days later. So I never know what I'm saying. And it's so delightful when we get the meaning. And the meaning changes, its relevancy and its meaning changes over time. So I say to clients, we can do the best we can to interpret this vast information today in terms of what's known, and an equally accurate and totally relevant interpretation, or more, is likely to unfold over time. When a friend or a client had lost her lover, she was convinced there'd never be another. And this was a friend, and occasionally friends say, have another glass of wine, Louise. And they're usually very respectful, and they don't say, what do you get? But, occasionally they throw a glass of wine. Anyway, so I saw this gal with a future partner wearing Dockers and something about plaid boxer shorts. I love to see how people, the ego self hates the unexpected. Oh, that must be this, or that must be that. And I say, it's future. And we really try to nail it, even though we can't even know what the meaning will be until it unfolds. 6 years into her now 17-year relationship with that guy, they're at their mountain cabin, their weekend cabin, and he comes down the stairs with a pair of plaid boxer shorts. He said, these were in the guest room. I don't know where they came from, and she just about fainted. My favorite example, a client years ago in New York was going through a wretched divorce. Her husband had turned her kids against her. She was trying to bite the bullet and soldier on, and I said, you need to process these emotions, the anger. No, I've got to, that's the past. And I said, well, sometimes this energy, or emotions are energy, and when they're not processed, they can become tumors, some believe. No, da-da-da-da. And I said, if you can embrace the pain and process it and deal with it, and maybe have some counseling, whatever, here's a potential positive future moment. I always say potential positive future moment because you could lock yourself in the back door, in the back room, and never go out where the universe can find you. The universe can't find you when you're in fear. You're contracted. But when you expand, sometimes when I'm feeling afraid or talking to my first ex-husband on the phone, and I started to get intimidated. I said, just a sec, and I went, in my head I was going, ha! Suddenly my energy was filling the room. It changed the whole conversation. So I said to this woman, if you can process this and let your challenges empower you, here's a potential positive future moment. There's something about a wooden beam, butterflies, and you're reflecting on your life and you're feeling so grateful for the gifts you've received from moving through the challenges. Oh, that must be my grandparents' house. That they have a beam across. I said, it's future. 7 years later, she called. She got back in touch and she said she had developed breast cancer that forced her to get into counseling. She became a Buddhist and was going to the Buddhist center in Manhattan every day, or whenever, and found herself one day in the meditation room reflecting on her life, feeling so grateful for the gifts her life and her challenges had brought her. And she looks up, and there's a wooden beam across the ceiling with butterflies stamped on it. So if you figure like a space station, and all these potentialities are floating out there, around there, and we line ourselves up and it can lock into our space station. And that is a possible future that becomes a reality. So it's really fun to see the difference. Now, the difference between our perception and how things unfold. I remember when I used to live in Newport, a gal came for an in-person consultation. She went back and told her husband, very left-brain analytical skeptic, and he said, you know how she does this. You drive up, she gets your license plate, she calls the credit bureau. What's the expression? Do you know people can hear you? I want to say, did you hear what you just said? But that's as far as the left brain analytical logical mind can stretch. That picture of Tinkerbell, it's on my website. I was showing it at a workshop in London, and a very analytical guy looks at it and says, oh, yes, that's the light refracting, and blah, 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 blah. And that was as far as his logical mind could stretch. He was trying to explain what he was watching. Then I said, now look at it through your little boy self's eyes. And I can almost hear a click, click, and suddenly I hear, oh. He flipped from his left brain logical mind to his heartful, intuitive, childlike, right brain, intuiting self. So I do exercises. Oh, so I was going to say, so we all have a very unique way of intuiting. My second husband was British, and he passed over last year. And let's just say, I asked John if he minds if I use him as an example. And he's right here, and he gets all kind of fluffed up when I do, so I definitely have his permission. And he was wired kind of funny, uniquely. And when we sold the London place, and he had to get back to Australia, and I was on tour in the U.S., I said, I can help you sell all those books under the bed on eBay. Don't touch my books. My books are my friends. And he meant it. When we were on our honeymoon in Ireland, in the Ring of Kerry, wonderful old hotel on the water, and it happens to be where George Bernard Shaw wrote the play St. Joan. So we're in the wonderful old library. We're by ourselves, and John, of course, supported my work. He didn't roll his eyes. And I said, I see George Bernard Shaw here. You know, we're within each other's reality. He's just non-physical. And it's like he's obsessing about something under his arm. John walks around the room, pulls a book off the shelf, opens it up, and reads about how George Bernard Shaw, living in London, was down and out and took his etchings to a regular soiree he would go to where they were stolen, and he never found them. I was speaking on a cruise, and we were in the internet cafe, and a client has emailed a very new agey kind of far out kind of thing. And John takes a book off the shelf, opens it up, and there it is. We were in an old dollar store, I think, and with friends up in Connecticut. He goes to the back of the store. I didn't know that they even had books. Louise! And he finds a book that was written by a friend of mine. And there's a testimonial or acknowledgement about me at the back of the book. And I said, we ought to take this on the road, join a carnival, and all we need is a bunch of books. And so I would giggle, I would laugh at John. I'd say, you're just otherworldly, and then he would giggle. This timeless stream of consciousness, where I can go to the future, go to the past. Again, this stream is timeless and it's infinite. And occasionally it catches me off guard. And 3 times when I've been feeling tremendous love from my son, his future partner pops in. And the last time I was thinking, Dylan's so brilliant and just so amazing. And my heart was absolutely open to Dylan. And his future partner pops in and says, yeah. And she says, I'm going to enjoy talking to him on the couch when the kids are in bed. And I, like my most curious, impatient client, I wanted to say, how does he get from here to there? A future son of his has popped in saying, and I'm going to really like spinach. So it's all there, in this timeless stream of consciousness. And you need to quiet the mind. You need to give the chattering monkey a banana, what some call, refer to meditation. You need to get out of your own way. You need to observe when your thoughts, your ego self, takes you out of the present, out of alignment. You need to practice getting back into alignment by going to your heart.
What you mean by take you out of the present, out of line here? How about a web search for it?
So one of the new functionalities of the latest iOS, the latest update, is that your phone can be off. Hey Siri. Well, and then Siri was listening. So I had my phone off, and the ringer off, and I was on the phone with an apprentice. And I see it flash, and I look over, and Siri has transcribed. Siri still wants to help. Siri has transcribed the last 3 paragraphs I've said to my apprentice. And then suddenly Siri says, I don't think you're talking to me. Just transcribed what I said. Okay, go sleep, Siri, go sleep. Where was I? Technology. So quiet, so observing when your ego self is trying to control things, when you're in fear, when you're trying to orchestrate everything, you're contracted. I've said many times that I believe that certain religions have taught us that if we're down and out and lowly and self-flagellating and humble enough, maybe God will hear our prayers. When in fact that consciousness contracts us and God can't find us. And so when we open our hearts and go to appreciation, gratitude, it's as if we come up the elevator into this illuminated lobby, where the voices said, I'm up here. And so it's everything, it's what we do in our consciousness. The other thing about some religions with very strict rules, as we play with the dark and the light, and our soul evolves from our challenges and what we do with our challenges, if we don't spiral down into victimhood. And so if we take a step back, become the observer, and know that the people who twang us the most are often our greatest teachers, blah, blah, blah. I know you've heard that in metaphysics. But it's really true. Then when we get the lesson, the insight, those kinds of challenges disappear. They fall through the cracks, and we move on to new growth, new challenges. And so just last week I was at the Apple Genius Bar. And the tech guy was done with me. I think I should say that differently. The tech guy had ended our session, and he left a cable there on the table. And my lower self thought, oh, it'd be nice to have an extra cable. But my more conscious self will never forget the feeling growing up in La Cañada and at maybe 5 years old having walked off with a piece of bubble gum from the shopping bag. And I was in torment for months. And that has stuck with me. Some people need religion with very strict rules to feel safe, to feel less confused in this world. But unfortunately, the dark side, which we all have, dark and light, the dark side gets anthropomorphized as a devil that's going to send you to hell. I remember reading a gal who has always seen spirits, and she went to Catholic school, and the priest used to put her at the front of the class to sit by the potbelly stove so she'd know what hell felt like. And so it's kind of anthropomorphizing our dark self and making it the devil. But when we embrace it and work with it, and each moment, even like at the Apple Genius Bar, where there's temptation. Temptation isn't the devil, Satan. It's our own dark side. And then when we're learning from our challenges and getting more experience in what works, what doesn't work, we make a more illuminated choice, and then we go home happy and without guilt, shame, whatever, or the fear of going to hell. So hell and heaven, it's a state of consciousness. We create our own heaven with what's in our consciousness. Loved ones are often showing me that they're in golf heaven, bridge club heaven, they're with their old war buddies, a lot of garden heaven. And so my sister-in-law said, well, then I'm going to land in a Seeds candy store. That's going to be her heaven. So it's wonderful you're always such a savvy, bright, curious group. And you'll find the the Tinkerbell picture if you go on my website, louisehauck.com, and go to Media, Gallery, and then you'll see Tinkerbell and several other things. If you go to Services, you'll see Monday Minis. And this is something I've started this year, where when I'm holding them on Monday Minis, you can come into Skype for $20, and you get a mini, like I often do in audiences. Do like my Facebook page. You can see the 900-year-old tree, and I post things about consciousness. I have a sign-up sheet out there. I never send hard copy stuff. I know we all get too much stuff, but it lets me know where you are, and we can stay in touch. And to all of you, I'm extending the twofer deal that I usually extend to clients over holidays. And that if you bring a friend on board, then it's a reduced hour session, either over the phone or in person. I have a few openings left while I'm here. I'm staying in Big Canyon, and then phone sessions work great. It's funny, people in their logical minds can't understand how I can do it over the phone. And when I was in London, I didn't let clients know I was across a big pond, because how can she do it over the phone, much less across a big pond? And it's such a virtual world. At that time, I was living in London. My coordinator was living in Sacramento. And a client says, I talked to your receptionist today because my business address is still in New York. So she thinks I'm in New York, and Kathy, well, anyway, it's all very virtual. But again, another example that it's non-local. It's consciousness that exists. It's omnipotent and omnipresent. I think that I didn't even need to refer to my cell phone, but Siri, I think, got lonely. One example of telepathy. I was doing a workshop, and I was demonstrating telepathy. And so I stopped by this gal, and I said, okay, take a deep breath with me, and I've got an image or some thoughts in my head. I was thinking to myself how the week before I was waiting for the handyman to come. I'd never met him, and I go to put on lipstick. And I'm thinking, has it come to this? I'm putting on lipstick for the handyman. Well, he never showed up. But Veronica, we got in sync, and she said something about lipstick, the sound of clogs or shoes across marble or hardwood floors in a gala event, like at a mansion, whatever. I said, bingo. She got the lipstick part. She didn't know that I call my condo overlooking the Snake River in Idaho, waiting for road signs to come west. And when she came for a private consultation, she sees me walk across the hardwood floors in my clogs. And so condo mansion is what I refer to, and she interprets gala event, mansion. So it's really, really fun to see how these multidimensional impressions get translated when they're brought into this linear way of communicating. When I said to a gal, I see you coming into a new chapter, and it's going to be really smooth, like cake icing, and she says, I'm a cake decorator. So anyway, I think I've given you a sample of how delicious it all is, so I invite you to open up to your more intuitive right brain and intuitive receiving selves, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.